Welcome to Max Value, a show for business owners and their professional advisors pursuing maximum value. We talk about business valuation, exit planning, global staffing, and all sorts of fun stuff. I'm your host, Ben Towne. Today, I have the honor of sharing time with my friend, coach, and mentor, John Walker. Among many things, John's been a 40-year leader in Vistage International, an executive coaching organization, as well as a many-time successful business owner. As a world traveler, family man, and a person I learned something from literally every time I talk to him. John, thank you for coming on and talking with me today. Can you start us off with a little bit of history? How did you get here? Because here's the thing. I tried to look up the high points on your LinkedIn page, and frankly, it really kind of sucks as a biography. It's like as if Benjamin Franklin wrote that he had been a lifelong newspaper guy who liked flying kites. So give us a little bit more of your business history.
Sure, happy to, Ben. So the business history began really, the part I think that you'd be referring to would be after I graduated from undergraduate school engineering, a couple of years in the service and a year working. I came to
That
business
was the Marines, right?
Army.
That was the Army. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Army. Yeah. So I came out here to Sanford for business school with full intentions of going back to Georgia, where I was raised in the Atlanta area, to help build the New South. But one thing led to another. First, it was interesting job opportunities here. Then it was an interesting woman here who I ultimately married. So I never really left California, which has been terrific, terrific here. So my early career was working for a large Fortune 500 forest products company, which gave me some great opportunities in core businesses. Then I began kind of an entrepreneurial streak, which had some ups and downs, as it often does. Then I found my way into an organization which is now called Vistage, which is peer advisory groups primarily for CEOs. And I invested 30 plus years in that, leading groups in the local Bay Area, plus helping form groups and be part of the leadership team nationally for the organization, which is based in San Diego. And that kind of leads me to here. I retired a few years ago, mostly. I still have my finger in here and there.
Well, and you were the chair of Vistage at one point, right?
I was from the corporate standpoint, it's an international company. So I was VP of marketing, the first one that took the company nationally. Originally was basically a Southern California organization, and we went national about 35 years ago. And I've been a chair locally and helped grow the regions and just a number of different roles. It's a nice, flexible organization that fits a good lifestyle.
Ah,
Yeah.
gotcha. Well, great. So in, in your long career, what are some of the business successes that you're particularly proud of?
Well, I would go back to kind of take each segment. So early in my career, I think I was 27, working for a large forest products company. I was put in charge of one of the large manufacturing plants in the New York metro area. It was actually in what's called the Meadowlands now. And it was a plant that would be set with a lot of labor strife. It had been recently organized by the Newark Teamsters Union, which I think that says everything you need to know about that.
Tough people.
And within a few months, I took a number of decisions which led to a wildcat strike, which led to conflict with the union, which led to all kinds of threats. However, within 3 or 4 weeks after that, um, the employees decided they didn't want to deal with all that kind of stuff and just wanted to be great employees. And the company started hitting record production. So that was encouraging for somebody newly minted and much younger than all the people I was leading. Um, and so that I learned there that it's really about winning, respecting the people who work for you, regardless of what they do, giving them an opportunity to succeed, and they will repay that generally with the opportunity to be as good as they can be. That was a good experience for me. In an entrepreneurial role, at one point, I was able to secure the exclusive distribution rights for a product called the Brita water filter for the Western United States. And in fact, it turned out I was basically the only person selling it. And I did that for a couple of years. We built that up. And later, Clorox bought it, bought my portion out, and bought the US operation. That was a great entrepreneurial success. Worked out well. Still have some pictures I'm very proud of with me and my teenage boys at various trade shows displaying the Brita water filter, getting business. So that was one. And my years with Vistage, it's hard to know any particular highlights. It was just wonderful to be able to help business leaders like you and other people who start companies and run companies to become better at what they do, become better humans, have better lives, and lead better companies and get better results, because that's what we're all about.
Absolutely. And
There
by
are
the way,
hundreds of stories there, of course.
hundreds, exactly. I really appreciate I appreciate the fact that you shared three stories. They're not just one thing that was something great that you did. I really appreciate that first story where you were a strike breaker, but through respect rather than strong arming or any other method that you could have taken. You were probably relatively fresh out of the army at that point, and through a respectful understanding of the other people, you were able to come to a way of working together that seemed to work. That's pretty cool. So, looking at the other side of the equation, obviously in a long career, everybody's going to run into some failures. So, what were some failures in your long career that were particularly instructive to you?
Well, the during my entrepreneurial period, I did start a company. It was called Fermentech, and this was in about around 1980, when we had gone through oil embargoes of 79. The price of oil had shot up. Carter was president when we began, before Reagan got elected. And there was a number of initiatives set out by the government to deal with the energy crisis and the cutoff of supply from OPEC. At the same time, the environmental movement was taking hold. So I and some colleagues started a business which converted certain select industrial food processing waste streams into energy, into ethanol, to be blended with gasoline, which it has now is common throughout the United States,
Hmm.
in California.
A lot of corn ethanol. Yeah.
Yeah, it's corn ethanol. So what we were doing, we said, well, if we take something that people have to pay to get rid of, and we can make something that people will pay to have, that should be a winning proposition. So we had two approaches. One approach was to take the waste from soft drink bottling plants, convert that to ethanol, because they were paying large fees to dispose of the quote wasted sugar water, spilled sugar water. And we, in fact, built several small facilities that were at bottling plants in Florida and Oklahoma and Wisconsin. And they powered part of their fuel for their trucks. It signs, it's good PR for them, as well as offsetting some of the cost for waste disposal. But our largest facility was a demo plant in the valley where we took cheese whey and fermented the lactose and produced a protein byproduct, whey protein, and ethanol. And we were doing quite a bit. Unfortunately, the business didn't succeed. The business failed for um, one major reason is the market didn't sustain itself.
Hmm.
When the government puts incentives in place, if one depends on it, one takes a big risk, and those incentives went away. And then I found out that the VCs that backed me, which had deep pockets, had at that time they developed very short arms. So we didn't get additional funding, and we eventually closed those plants down. The ones we sold to the bottlers succeeded. Well, that was very painful.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was in hindsight, obviously a right decision. It was probably a ill-timed venture. Um, Technically, it worked, but financially, it didn't.
Well, and certainly the right idea, wrong time kind of issue. Because I mean, it certainly might have worked now. Uh, well, or at least you could think of it now, and anyway,
It'd be different now,
it'd
right?
be different. Yeah, for sure. Very interesting. Hmm. Okay. And from that failure, I mean, financially anyway,
Yep.
and
Yep.
look, we all have those that inform our experiences and our later successes. Uh, heck, I'll share, that me and my wife, started a restaurant, and that was a very ill-conceived idea that I learned a lot from. The But we've also learned those lessons, right? So, what do you think was the lesson from that experience?
Well, I think there were a couple of things. One is to not let my one is to base a business which depended at an important level on government subsidies, government roles, because whatever the government can put in place, it can and will take away. If you look at what's happening with solar credits today,
Yeah.
they were there a long time, but if you depend the business on government things, so that was one. Another one was being I think I was emotionally connected to the what I perceived as the good of dealing with a
Mm,
waste product and helping to solve an energy problem. And I think that impacted my judgment about whether it was a good long-term sustainable business venture.
that makes sense.
My investors invested for that reason as well. That was call it a selling point for investment, but it was a if we're going to invest in something, let's try to do good by it. Um, Not to say that good isn't worth doing, but it's not enough to sustain a business. Good intentions is not enough. I think that would be my two major learnings from that.
Now, flipping over to not just your own personal experience, but I mean, you spent something like 40 years in Vistage,
Right.
and saw, as you said, hundreds of businesses and helped many of them become successful or more successful. Were there commonalities, in those businesses that either kept them from being successful and they broke through those issues, or things that got them to be successful? I'm not sure I asked that question very well, but I think you
Well,
got what
let's take a stab at it and see where
yeah,
we
let's go.
go. The first thing I've come to believe is that the success of a business lies within the heads of the leader, right here. So the leader's vision is small, the business is small. If the leader has a vision that's large, the business will be larger. If the leader has a service oriented mindset and belief that says, I'm here to make a product or service to serve customers better than other people do, so we can do that. I think that is helpful to success. Um, Also, the leader's basic assumptions and beliefs and worldview come into it. Limiting beliefs. Well, we can't do this, so we don't try to do that, whatever this is. Um, those are some of the things. So it really begins with how the leader thinks about it, what the leader's core beliefs are, the leader's vision. Let me give you a great example. I had for a while the CEO of Peach Coffee. I think I can talk about that. Well, I learned that the history of Pete's is quite interesting. At one point, the owners of Pete's and the owners of Starbucks were the same three people. Three people from Berkeley went to Pete's while they were at Berkeley, decided to go to Seattle, want to start a coffee company, asked Pete's to brew their coffee, to roast their coffee, So they were selling Pete's beans in Seattle, branded as Starbucks. As Starbucks grew, they grew to about 6 stores. Alfred Pete said it was time to retire. So he said, who should sell it to? So he sold Pete to the three, his customer in Starbucks. So at that time, there were about an equal number of stores. Three owners, usually that's a tough one to manage. It's hard for
Yeah.
three people to always be on the same page when they all are seeing themselves as equal. So after a short period of time, the business split. And one of the owners turned in his Starbucks shares and took over the Pete's stores. That owner had a vision of Pete's as being making perfect coffee. Perfect coffee means it's always fresh. We're not going to put flavors in it. We're not going to do a lot of things. The people at Starbucks said, no, we want to create a different kind of company. So they created a brand identity and a market that said, this is a place to come. Over the years, obviously, Starbucks grew into a huge coffee company. Pete's was pretty much limited to the Bay Area for a long time.
Mhm.
The belief of the owner, for example, on fresh coffee said that it has to be roasted within a day of its use. Well, it's hard to do that if you want to ship across the country. How do you do that? And you have to have volume stuff. Anyway, the story was that because the leadership had very different views, they started with exactly the same product, and the companies went in very different directions because the vision of the two leaders were dramatically different. Since then, Pete's the board changed the leadership at Pete's. Pete's went public. Pete's now has become a very different kind of company. It still is very different from Starbucks in some core ways it operates.
Hmm.
Well, that's an example. I think one of the best examples I know of companies we're familiar with here in the Bay Area of how the CEO's vision makes such a dramatic difference in how a company grows.
That that is that's fascinating because in business, I mean, in life in general, but in business specifically, it's really hard to find instances where you can have kind of an experiment where you have, two things that start out basically identically, and then there's kind of a control experiment, if you will, an A/B test. And to see where it goes. Because in a certain sense, I mean, just philosophically, there's nothing wrong with having a vision of your company wanting to, brew perfect coffee, and that's a valid choice. It's just not in the end, it didn't end up being the economically most popular choice for the marketplace. And so if you're optimizing for more money, that's not the one you should choose, as it's turned out to be. So that very interesting. Thank you. One of the things that Max Value Podcast talks about in particular is growing value and exiting. And so when we're talking about succession and maybe between generations, have there been experiences that you've been part of that have been instructive in your career?
This is an issue, particularly with family businesses that I've seen.
Hmm.
And I've had a number of family businesses that I've been privileged to work with. again, it comes back to the way the CEO slash owner sees both the business and the family. The ones that I've seen that have been successful um, spend a lot of energy thinking about what's good for the business, separate from what's good for the family. And where there's commonality, you put those two together, and where there's not commonality, if one gets confused, if they confuse those two objectives, sometimes the results don't turn out well. An example of when it doesn't turn out well. There was one company I worked with. The CEO had 7 children
Hmm.
and had the vision that each one of them should wind up with 1/7 of the business, of his share of the business. I mean, just think about your siblings or any other people you know that have siblings. It's rare that all would have the same.
I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and love them dearly. And I no possible business arrangement could actually ever work in that situation,
Right, right. So
as great as they are.
in this case, the challenge for the child who was running the business was how to gain the support necessary to move the business around, and yet uh, try to satisfy the needs of it. You know, some just wanted cash out of the business,
Right.
but the right thing for the business is to reinvest it. And an opposite one, I worked with a company that had CEO had 3 sons. He was getting ready to retire. And one son was in the business, the other 2 were not, yet they were owners, equal owners.
Mhm.
So he decided and worked with the family for a few years so that he transferred all the ownership of the company to the son who was in the business. So he was a successor, and then transferred other assets outside the business to the other sons so that they had essentially equal asset value, but yet didn't screw up the business. And he
Right.
had gotten that experience because it was a third generation business, and his father had not done that, and he had an estranged relationship with his brother for 30 years. They didn't speak. He didn't want that to happen to his children.
That
Uh,
Thanksgiving's important. I mean, right?
Thanksgiving.
You want everybody to show up and actually talk to each other. And I knew the CFO of this spirits company a while back, Nolet Spirits, that they make Kettle One and Nolet Gin. And they've been around, they're a private company that's been around since 1691. I looked it up. And the reason why they're still around after all that time is they basically do the same thing. Every generation, when they hand over the reins, they always make a family member be in charge and basically buy out everybody else so that they can have that, single point of leadership and continuity. Um, and it's really, I think that's really interesting. It's somebody had figured that out a long time ago, and it's still often the way to go.
Right.
John, you told me something the other day that I really found to be profound, and it really is something that, I thought could be, carved on a stone tablet somewhere. You
Mm.
said the ultimate wealth is human creativity, and I just really, really like that. Can you can you tell me what that means?
Gentlemen, let me ask you to think about the world 30,000 years ago and the world today. So, materially, what the world is composed of, is it significantly different? The amount of oxygen, nitrogen, zinc, iron, gold, silver, do you think it's different?
No.
No. Yet, if you look at the world today, it looks very different. What's different?
What we've
What's
created.
different is that human beings, Homo sapiens, have come along, and their creativity has changed the natural world into useful products that improves the standard of living for humans around the globe. The only difference is humans. And the difference between humans and other animals, one of the significant differences is creativity, the mind. Now, we're physically built in a certain way we can do things that other animals can't do as well, but it's significantly the mind. So that's the starting point for me. It's the human creativity. Um, in the history of this country, what we see is many people who've come to this country with nothing. Perhaps they had something somewhere else. They come here and given the freedom to pursue their own ambitions with what they have in their head, in the drive that they have in their hearts to create and create wealth, create well-being, create great works of art, create works of thought. So human creativity. There's many stories also of people who were successful in one country. They have to leave that. They bring nothing to the new country and they recreate the wealth again.
Mm-hmm.
Our own country, we have stories of people who are very wealthy and creative and they go through cycles of making a lot of money, losing a lot of money, making a lot of money, losing a lot of money. So to me, those are examples that it's the creativity of the human combined with passion and desire that creates wealth. So whenever we have situations where that creativity is stifled, we create adverse conditions for making wealth and increasing the prosperity and well-being of people. That's the way I would think about it.
Makes sense. I mean, creativity drives value, absolutely. And so in that regard, you have to try something new. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with the same old thing. And whether that's, hunting with a spear versus, creating the bow and arrow or,
Right.
creating the next new product out there or next new service out there. Absolutely. Create some new value. While you were talking about, especially the kind of the immigration story, for example, it was making me think of a book I've been reading, The Worlds I See by Dr. Fei Fei Li, where she's coming from China and becomes a leading physicist here in America. After having to learn English and come up the ladder that way. Very, very, very interesting to see from somebody who's now so renowned and so eloquent, much more eloquent than I am. I've been grilling you this whole time on
Okay.
just your business acumen and all the things that you've seen, but um, I've I always ask people about, things about themselves as well. So, in this getting to know you segment, I'm going to ask you just a few things about that.
Okay.
There's nothing on your darn LinkedIn anyway. But what's one personal thing that you would like people to know about you?
Oh my goodness. Um,
It doesn't have to be your deepest, darkest secret or
yeah,
anything.
no, no. Um, well, I was thinking about this interview coming up and thinking about business, and I was thinking about where did I start? Um, so I was fortunate, I think, to grow up like many did in my generation, without much in the way of wealth. Family was very modest. And so I learned probably at about age 6 that if I wanted things in life, I had to go make it happen. So I started picking wild blackberries and wild plums and selling them, and then making small things and selling them. My first sale, in fact, was to a village blacksmith, if you can believe it. There actually was one in this little wide spot in the road in Georgia that I lived. Um, and so I suppose, the self-reliance that we develop by learning that we can solve problems, learning we can uh, find ways to get what we need and what we want by using our own energy and creativity and drive. Um, so I think I started as an entrepreneur when I was 6, and that continued through high school, college, after college. So it continued. Um, I'm an only child, which has pluses and minuses. So the plus is there's nobody else to blame when something gets broken around the house. The But the plus is that one does become used to uh, relying on oneself. That there is also a negative that I have to guard against, is being too self-reliant and not reaching out to others. My Vistage experience has demonstrated to me in spades the power of having a group of peers to talk to openly, honestly, without bias or complexity, and to listen to others. Um, there weren't others in my life. There weren't very many others in my life when I was growing up. So this was a learning for me.
Hmm.
So I would say that's one.
Interesting. But I will say, being the oldest, in my case, being the oldest of 3 siblings, you get that a little bit as well. You're the one looking out for the other two, and it's not like I'm a lot of times taking advice. These days, I'm a little bit better about it, but always trying to be responsible for the other two and not really listening to what they have to say. Uh, Now's better. But interestingly, your response earlier was interesting. Just the fact that there was a blacksmith when you were growing up. I'm assuming that he was shoeing horses and was more of a farrier than making farm implements, but maybe he
But
was.
both,
That's
actually,
crazy.
both.
Right? Okay.
It was really more. Um, there were probably more mules in the area than horses.
Okay.
But
That's
he was
amazing.
he would repair instruments. It was a rural area,
Oh boy,
all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
that's awesome.
and he was not under a spreading chestnut tree, but he was under a big kind of a willow tree. That just
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, uh, maybe the answer to this question is right back home in Georgia, but where you've been all around the world,
mhm.
world traveler, where is the most interesting place that you visited?
That's a hard question to answer because there's so many interesting things everywhere. If one looks and is curious, I think. Um, One thing comes to mind is I went to China a year and a half ago. Spent a few days in Hong Kong and a few days in Sichuan area. The contrast between the two, in terms of the energy of the people,
Hmm.
their outlook, and so forth. But it was just interesting how they um, I felt relatively at home in Hong Kong. Could be like being in any other large Western city, but mainland China was a different experience. Um, I also had a trip to Argentina and Chile some years back, and was fascinated at how those two countries had similar experience up through the 70s. Both had military juntas take over and run the countries. They created certain levels of atrocity. One of them, Argentina, moved to socialist Peron and went down that path for development. The other one, actually, the junta adopted free market economics in Chile. Pinochet did that. And he allowed a constitution to be written and he stepped down from power. As I remember the story, and I haven't fact checked it, but I think that they hired Milton Friedman to help set up their economic system, their monetary system.
Hmm.
And so, in going to those two countries, in Chile there was vibrancy. Santiago was huge new buildings, a lot of construction going on. Buenos Aires, on the other hand, a beautiful city, wonderful people, but broken sidewalks, high inflation, which
Mm.
has gotten worse. But and just the difference between the two, and they're both naturally rich countries. They have
Mm.
abundant farmland, they have great climates, they have natural resources. So that's not the difference. The difference was the way the two countries and the people there developed their governments and their system of their economy afterwards. I found that very interesting. It is an interesting place from other ways, somewhat beautiful. Both of them are beautiful countries. Would love to go back. Yeah.
You're just such a student of human history. That's very cool. John, so you're mostly retired, which is
Yes.
awesome. I want to be you,
Yeah.
for
You
real.
will be.
One day.
You will be.
That's the goal. But you do still do some coaching and mentoring, and which I personally very much appreciate. So, but why is what you do rewarding to you?
Well, I believe that we all have talents and gifts, and happiness comes from being able to employ those to help other people. So, to the extent I do that, it gives me a lot of satisfaction.
You do.
That's why I do it. Yeah.
You do. Thank you. Okay. Uh, Now, even though you have so much talent and gift, we always try to improve ourselves. So, are you reading something at this point that you find interesting?
Yeah, I usually have several books going at the same time and pick up one or the other depending on actually sometimes I use audiobooks. Now we use audiobooks because we can travel or walk or exercise and listen to things. Yeah, so one book I'm reading is a book called Superabundance, which essentially talks about the concept of time prices, the price of everything in terms of the time it takes to acquire it. That how many minutes of my life do I have to spend to get a new car, for example?
Okay.
The gist of the book is that the world has become immensely wealthier in the last 40 years because of, not in spite of, but because of the increase in population. Um,
Hmm.
every person is a consumer, but also every person is a creator and a builder, potentially, potentially. Yeah. So we create, and the price of everything, pretty much everything, has gone down in real terms.
And the real term then being the
Interesting
time.
example. So if we were 150 years ago and you wanted to light your house at night, how would you do that? Probably candles. 150. Anyway, before electricity, you'd probably use candles. So how much time would it take you to get candles, to make candles? How much of, and so if you converted that to how many dollars would you need to earn to buy the candles that somebody else had to spend their time making?
Hmm.
It's immensely more expensive than turning on a switch on the wall, not to mention the higher quality of the product.
Hmm.
Um, uh, so, and light, of course, eliminates darkness. so we can be more productive, more hours of the day. We can socialize, we can read, we can do all kinds of things, more days of the, so immensely productive, that sort of thing. Anyway, that's for superabundance. I'm reading that. I'm reading a book
Cool.
by Brad Taylor. It's an adventure book, super spy thing. And I'm reading a Clancy book. And I'm actually reading a book on the book of Ephesians, a study book on Ephesians, written by John MacArthur, who just died this week. He's a pastor from Southern California.
Okay, cool. Well, that's very cool.
Depending on mood and time and so forth, I pick one of those up.
Well, I usually have a couple of different kinds of genres going at the same time myself. Like you said, different, based on your mental capacity at any given time. For one thing, your appetite for something a little harder to get through and something a little easier and a little fluffier. But that's great. I haven't heard of superabundance. I'm gonna look into that. You kind of what was popping into mind when you were talking about how easy it is to flip on a light switch and compared to rendering tallow and creating a candle and all that stuff and going back even further in time and hunting a sperm whale for its oil and that kind of thing. If you have to go try to kill a Moby Dick every single time you want to stay up past 8 o'clock, you're probably not doing it that often, which would be hard for a night owl like me. So, yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. So, John, I don't think you want to be found, but if you did want to be found, where would do you want to be found these days?
Sure. I haven't even looked at my LinkedIn page in a while, so maybe I should look at that again.
You probably should.
Perhaps update it or embellish it a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm mostly, I'm doing a fair amount of traveling, and my wife and I are just involved in community activities, so we're doing well.
Awesome.
Probably about enough business as I'd like to do, but occasionally something interesting comes along.
You're easy to find, and you are known around here, especially in the South Bay.
Okay.
John, thank you. I could talk with you forever, but I think I have to spare you any more of your time here. Thank you so much for joining me on this.
Well, thank you, Ben. It's
Really enjoyed
been
having you.
great questions.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Be well.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in. This has been an episode of Max Value. Find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other streaming services. Please like, subscribe, and follow, and we'll see you for the next show.